All right, Wonder Years fans, the show is back after a random hiatus. Look, the Wonder Years and our kind of people, they've been pretty weird where, they take random breaks, but I'm glad the show's back. This was season 1, episode 9, entitled Home for Christmas. I give it a 10 out of 10. This was a great episode. Before going into the review, make sure you take a moment to hit the like button to show you like the video, of course. Hit subscribe as we move closer to 200,000 subscribers. Hit that bell icon and select all. That way you do not miss out whenever I post content on the channel. And follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. So the family's excited because Bruce has finished his 2-year duty in, I believe, Vietnam. And he's finally home for Christmas. Bruce is 20 and he gets his first beer. And, the family is just glad to have him back. Turns out that him and Dean have a Christmas tradition of staying in a treehouse in order to wait for Santa in the cold night air. And the next day at school, Dean's friends talk about a movie regarding people who come back from war and they aren't the same. So as a result, Dean wants to keep an eye on his older brother to make sure, he isn't crazy or wild or anything like that. So when Greg goes to run some errands, Dean tags along. And they go over to the Johnson's house, but it turns out that the reason that Dean, was worried because his brother had been in the house for so long was because that, he got out the car, he had a duffel bag. So Dean was like, what's going on here? It turns out that one of the guys in his, regiment had died. So that was the reason he went over to the house. And from there, they go over to the hardware store to get some supplies for their Santa watch night. And, Bruce notices there's a help wanted sign in the window. And then the manager's like, oh, well, it's been filled. Then maybe you should take the sign out the window. Basically saying that, oh, we want help, but not by black people. So from there, a guy just walks up to him. His name is Mark. And he says, hey, you served? Yeah, it's like just getting back home. But he says, hey, go over to the bank downtown. They actually have a lot of jobs. They love taking care of vets. So just tell him Mark sent you. And he's like, welcome back to the real world. And so, he goes about his way and, Mark is excited. So the next day, he's dressed up for his job interview. And once again, Dean tags along because he has a jar of pennies that he wants to handle at the bank. So he's excited for his brother because he's like, oh yeah, he's going to work at the bank, free lollipops and everything. And maybe there'll be enough money so I can, swim around in it like Scrooge McDuck. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Because DuckTales, the cartoon, even though it didn't exist that, obviously back in the, well, actually, wait, I think Scrooge McDuck, the cartoon existed, but DuckTales, the series, did not exist at the time. But he was in Scrooge comics, and we know that, he was in Disney comics, and we know that Dean loves comic books. So regardless, he knows about the Scrooge McDuck routine. So the cutaway where he's just randomly in a bathtub full of money with the hat and the monocle on his eye was hilarious. But Bruce comes out of the back office because before he went back there, the boss at the bank is like, hey, I served in World War II. And I just want to let you know we take care of our vets. But before actually explaining what happened, Bruce in a huff tells his brother, let's get out of here and leave. And his dad asks him, so how'd the interview go? And it turns out that the only position they had available for Bruce was to be a janitor. And it turns out that only the white vets get the good jobs. So I'm wondering when Mark, the guy that he ran into at the hardware store, gave him that information, I wonder if he knew that being black, Bruce would only be offered a job as a janitor. Because when he said, hey, welcome back to the real world, I wonder if that was a nod to, hey, going over there overseas serving was great, but we're back in the real world where black people, well, you're going to know where your place really is. So I don't know. Was Mark really just a nice guy helping out another serviceman? It's like, hey, you know what? When I got out of the war, here's where I went and things went well. Versus, hey, you're a fellow vet. There's a place I work at and we need more people to work there. So go ahead, janitor. I don't know. It's just one of those things where it could have been double talk. But I would like to think that Mark was actually a cool dude who was like, hey, you know what? Here was my experience. I served. I came home. I looked for a job and the bank has been treating vets well. But then again, that's like one of those things where white people talk about their experience because they don't see things through black eyes. They just see, I mean, hopefully Mark just saw a fellow serviceman and not just a black man, but we'll never know. So from there, Bill suggests going to college, but Bruce, will try to look at other options. And, his mom says, well, hey, you know what? I think Bill says, hey, on Monday, the dean of this school wants to talk to you. And earlier in the episode when they're having dinner, everybody sees Bruce for who he was before he went to war 2 years ago. It's like, hey, you know what? You played baseball and you were good in school, but that was 2 years ago. And it's like, I don't want to go to college to be around all these people my age, but they haven't seen the things I've seen. And while I'm at home, I'm a janitor. That's all people see me as. I had forgotten what it's like being back home because overseas things were different. I'm going to go back on tour in January because I can have a real career in the Army. And not only, I commanded a troop, I got respect. I wasn't treated the way I am here in the States being black. And most importantly, I want to help the guys overseas that I left behind. I want to help them get home because I haven't felt the same since I've been back, because it's almost like, a survivor's guilt thing where I get to go home, but those guys are still over there fighting. So, Dean is upset, so he has a sit-in where he has like a stop the war sign in one of the war recruitment offices, which was adorable. I don't know why, but I laughed. And I felt for him, but the fact that, all the recruitment officers were like, so how long is this sit-in's going to last? 'Cause I got to leave to visit my family before the holidays. And then he gets the candy cane. Don Cheadle's voiceover is what makes this show. Don't get me wrong, it's a great show regardless, but the comedic timing is what gets me whenever I watch certain scenes. But Bruce comes in and explains that, the reason I want to go fight and come home is because, well, I want to help the guys over there come home as well. And basically Dean learns that he's reasonably upset, but he's not the only family that's upset. His whole family was upset at the news about him leaving, considering how things get worse every day over there, and they just got him back. But as he said, you don't know what I've been through. Didn't his dad serve in some capacity? But regardless, eventually their mom starts making care packages and whatnot, basically accepting the fact that her son's a grown man and he's going to do what he's going to do. But the episode ends with them in the treehouse. They're watching Santa freezing their butts off, and then things round out when the family is opening Christmas presents. But, Bruce has a lot of gifts that he wouldn't be able to use unless he's home, like, vinyl records and things like that. But regardless, they're just happy he's home, and hey, hopefully he comes back safe someday. But this is something that I was really, really curious about, the continuity, because I wonder if Bruce is overseas at the same time as Winnie Cooper's brother from the first episode of The Wonder Years. I think in the first episode, it turns out her brother died. So what if her brother was in the troop that's being led by Bruce or something like that? That would be pretty cool to do something like that continuity-wise to really connect both shows. But, we'll just have to wait and see if something like that actually happens. But regardless, Home for Christmas was a solid episode, really showing that people who come from overseas aren't always the same, because, the things they've seen, the things they've gone through, the things they've experienced, the people they were before they got on that plane or boat are not the same people that come back. And not only that, being black, it just shows that while in one part of the world you're treated with respect and like you have a position of authority and power, and you come back to the quote-unquote real world and you realize that at a certain point in time that you're still just a boy, a janitor, something like that. So it sucks for the family, but you can really see why Bruce is doing what he's doing. So I really enjoyed this episode, and hopefully we see him in future episodes as season 1 goes on. I hope nothing bad happens to him, that's for sure. Too bad his grandpa wasn't in this episode. Maybe he got to see him while he was at home at least. But regardless, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on Home for Christmas. And as always, like and subscribe. And if you want to donate to the channel, feel free to do so on PayPal or Cash App.